In this lesson, let's take some time and actually refactor a component called ActivitySecondsToComplete. This component shows activity remaining time. So let's open up this component in the editor and let's see what can be simplified. So currently this component contains quite a few computed properties. In total there are 5 computed properties. So let's see if we will be able to reduce this amount. So let's start with the first 2 properties, classes and color classes. And they are very similar because each of those store classes for a particular DOM element. So why don't we go ahead and try to combine these 2 computed properties into one. So I'm basically going to return an array from this closure which consists of CSS classes. And whenever I need to determine classes dynamically, I'm basically going to use this expression directly as an element of this array. And now, computed property color classes can go away. And I think that after doing this refactoring, the code actually hasn't become less readable. So let's keep going and get to the rest computed properties. And firstly, I would like to rename this variable secondsDiff, which is used quite a lot in this component. Let's just assign more readable name. For example, let's call this property remaining seconds, because it stores amount of seconds that we still have to spend on the particular activity in order to fully complete it. And now that we have done this, we can also rename component file itself. So currently it is called ActivitySecondsToComplete, but why don't we call it remaining activity seconds? Because this is exactly what this component is used for, to show amount of time we have to spend to finish particular activity. And now let's find a reference where this component is currently being used, and that is inside activity item component, and use the new name, remaining activity seconds. So before actually doing any more refactoring, let's stop here and test this part. So when I start tracking the time for coding activity, then on the activities page, the component that shows remaining time should become green. Once this time will become positive. Let's wait for it. And here we go. Component has become green. So everything is fine. Now we can continue. And now I want to focus on this computed property called seconds. As we can see, this computed property consists of several parts. The first one is the sign, either plus or minus, that should be displayed in front of the remaining time. And then we're calling the function formatSeconds to apply formatting to the seconds stored inside remaining seconds property. But what if we'll try to create another formatting function which is going to format seconds for us? But this function will format the time, including sign. So then we can move this logic which is responsible for determining the sign into that new function. Let's do that. So inside functions.js, right above formatSeconds function, let's export new function which will be called formatSeconds with sign. And just like formatSeconds function, this function is also going to accept one parameter seconds, and then it will basically delegate all the work to the formatSeconds function, and we're going to forward this seconds parameter into this function, like this. But the main purpose of this function is to actually determine the sign, which should be used in front of the formatted seconds string. So let's just take this whole expression and put it in front of the formatSeconds function call and wrap it all within template string like this. And now we end up with such a lim function, which sole purpose is to format the time with the sign in front. And this additional function gives us a good opportunity to refactor remaining activity seconds component even further. So we no longer have to specify the sign in front of this expression, because what we're going to do instead is call our new function formatSeconds with sign, which already includes the logic to determine the sign. And now it lets us also completely remove computed property sign. Let's just go ahead and replace import of formatSeconds function on our new function formatSeconds with sign. And I would actually prefer to move this whole expression, which calls formatSeconds with sign function, directly in the template. Because as we know, templates are responsible for presenting the data, and formatSeconds with sign function applies formatting, which is directly related to the template's job. And which is why I'm going to copy this function call and move it directly in the template, like this. And additionally, inside templates, we don't need to manually unwrap array values by referencing value property. So let's remove this property from here. And by moving this formatSecondsWithSign function call directly in the template, we have actually applied the same approach that was applied inside progressItem component. Here we also left two function calls, formatSeconds, that are responsible for formatting data, and kept them in this template. And finally, since we no longer use computed properties seconds, which means this line can also be removed. And at the end, what we end up with is only 2 computed properties versus 5 that we had at the beginning of this lesson. And along the way, we have also created another helper function to format the time, including the sign called formatSecondsWithASign. So I'm going to make sure that this component functions properly. Let's start tracking the time for the coding activity and take a look at this component on activities page. So as time will become greater than 0, this block should become green. That's exactly what we're seeing, which means we have successfully done this refactoring. Let's continue in the next lesson.